Welcome to Bring Out Your Badass Self, a movement to break your negative thoughts and habits and instead focus on building each other up and encouraging fearless authenticity.
Each week, we will get vulnerable and share experiences alongside our guests and audience. Come rediscover your inner badass self.
Good morning, badass.
Good morning. How are you?
I am well. I am sleepy, but I am well. How are you?
You're a little sleepy and tired.
Yes.
It's very appropriate for today's topic, right?
Yes. I need to transmute this tired energy.
That's right. Exactly.
Into something alive.
You know, I'm doing good. I am childless today. I'm actually husbandless this morning. He's out playing golf, and so I'm on my own for a little bit until my husband gets back. And Riley's out with grandma. She's celebrating with her. Going to be with her on the 4th. They're actually down in Florida. And my cousin Trinity ended up surprising her and taking her to Cirque du Soleil. And so those that know Riley, she does aerial silk. So she was like, this was the best surprise ever.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's so awesome. And Trinity's such a great guy.
Yeah. And he was so excited to do that. He came down. He has a red convertible Mustang. And of course, they had pictures in front of it. And so they just loved that.
That's amazing. Yeah, we had him on when we talked about fostering.
That's right. Yeah. Well, today we have on some different shirts.
Yes.
And so,
you have to show yours first.
Oh, I do? Okay. So today is 4th of July. And so today what we wanted to do is do something a little bit different. And we end up having different shirts. So mine is...
Just here to bang.
Just here to bang. So play on the fireworks. And
Yes.
And Cate is playing on the most American person that there is. Like if we could bottle up Dolly and put it in everyone, like that is what America should be about.
It really is. I am a big Dolly Parton fan. I have 2 Dolly Parton shirts. My other one is a crop top that I only wear when I am camping with Chuck, who also wears ridiculous crop tops. But I have this great book that Jenna gave me, and it's called The Little Guide to Dolly Parton, Unofficial and Unauthorized. And it says, it's hard to be a diamond in a rhinestone world. And then it is just quotes. So, and it's divided into these hilarious chapters. So like rags to riches, jolly dollyisms, hillbilly heartbreaker.
Yeah.
You can just like look up all these amazing things that she said, and they're all so good, you know. Like I just opened this one. I just opened the book. Some people are just born cussers. I don't even realize I'm doing it. If I have offended anybody, tough titty. Like,
oh my God.
Absolutely. Yes, Dolly.
I love that. I love that she also says some things that are maybe like a little people just look at like the tough titties, you know that.
Yeah. Yep.
I just love that.
She is super badass. Like she's unapologetically herself. And and that comes, you know, like she's super generous. And yeah, and we could talk about Dolly probably the whole episode.
Oh my gosh, I know. Well, as you guys are joining, I know we might have a not that big of a crowd today. We'll see, because it is the 4th. People might be sleeping in because they have their day off and things like that. But we still wanted to go ahead and move forward because we only had 4 weeks in the month. So we have our different topics that we're going to be having next week. Just to be able to let you guys know, we do have someone that's going to be joining us. Her name is Danielle Gray. She's going to be joining us next week. And then we do have 2 individuals at the end of the month that will be joining us. So be sure to check back and see who that is. But for next week, it's going to be Danielle Gray. So for those that don't know, she's in the architectural engineering industry. She is also known as the Content Whisperer. She has 2 companies of her own, and she's also content director and oversees everything for Society for Marketing Professional Services on the national side. And so she's just an amazing person that is really about transmuting that energy into things that will allow you to be able to just find identify what's holding you back and transmute that.
Yeah, I love it. I can't wait to meet her. She sounds awesome.
She is, yeah. Well, Cate, this morning, you were like, oh, I'm so tired. Like you messaged me, you're like, I'm so tired. And I started thinking about it. I was like, this is really good. Maybe as we go through today, people can give ideas of how Cate can transmute that tired energy into something else.
Yes.
And then today, it's also 4th of July. So it's also a perfect day that sort of symbolizes and represents transmuting as well. And so maybe we can talk a little bit about what the law is.
Yeah. Yeah. So the law of perpetual transmutation of energy, it is just that energy can change. Its scientific kind of background is that is all about the chemical reactions that happen when a nucleus actually changes form into another thing, right? So it's like this law is what's behind like a lot of biomedical stuff. So like a lot of our modern day medicine would not be a thing if transmutation of energy wasn't possible, because we're relying on those chemical reactions when one component hits another component and to actually create the medicine that then interacts with the components inside your body. So so yeah, that's kind of the law and the background in science. And I think there's nothing that doesn't transmute energy quite as well as fire, right?
Especially fireworks. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we talked about last month, the energy, like energy is constantly moving and changing its form. And as you described, it's really that law of physics.
Yeah.
And the law of conservation of energy states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. So that's really what we're talking about today, is that transformation or transmuting that energy. And whenever I think about this particular law, it was a lot of what you ended up encapsulating is that it means that you can change your life however you want. And so it's ultimately our responsibility to transform it and decide whether to accept or reject opportunities that are presented to us by the universe, which is energy. And that energy is always moving, and you can choose to go with the flow or not go with the flow.
Right.
So it's all about raising your vibration, and you can attract positive things in your life and manifest and desire them. However, there's a lot of things that we also have to think about as well, the things that get in our way. And that's a lot of the things that we're also going to talk about today. But I thought we might also talk about just thinking about fireworks in general. So think about fireworks and how they change. So there's different components of it. So one, there's a vivid representation of how it changes, but Cate, maybe you can talk a little bit about, like, there's a chemical reaction to fireworks.
Yeah. So, there's all these chemicals and material inside of the firework, they're like little dynamite. and you when you light it, there's something in there that activates like this propelling, usually, unless it's like a firecracker that stays on the ground. But, it's propelled into the air, And the entire time the firework is moving, that is like the law of perpetual transmutation of energy, like in motion, right? And each kind of step along the way is a different level of transformation.
Yeah.
So,
and it also has the thermal energy as well. So the energy is, the chemical is converted to thermal, and then it also produces the light. So think about the light, forming and bursting, and it has different colors and sounds. So the bang, it's just really illustrates the overall principles that energy can form and change in multiple ways.
Right. Like there's a ton of chemical reaction. It's not just like, not just dynamite.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you think about the visual aspect. So think about, when you're watching a firework and that visual impact of that energy, it's a vibrant display of the firework. And it's really that burst that you're seeing out there and how it's even transforming as it's in the sky. Like, I really love it whenever I see a firework and it's like, it's one thing and then all of a sudden it visually becomes something else.
Yeah.
So just that explosion in the moment of that energy, and then how it is changing, and it's moving from, potential energy to kinetic energy. And I just love also then the auditory. So the sound of the firework as well. So all of those different changes that are happening.
Yeah, absolutely. My favorites are the ones where you can see the change in the sky too. Obviously, the change is happening as it's going up and as it's doing its thing. But then, when it bursts and it's one thing and then it like sizzles and turns into something else, there's just something really magical about that, those couple of seconds when you have your eyes on them. I will say though that they're super exciting, but what I have found is that going to the same place every year to watch the fireworks feels like a little redundant. So I have found that I enjoy fireworks if I watch them from different places every year or different locations, because honestly, they're the same thing, right? So like you got to change up your environment a little bit to maybe enjoy them a little differently.
Yeah. Well, Jan is here. Hello, Jan.
Hi, Jan.
Welcome. I don't know if I'm assuming maybe you're not working today, or hopefully not. I don't know. Maybe you are. Some people may not take off 4th of July and others do. I know sometimes it's up in the air for us. Like if it's on the Friday, we're like, nobody's going to be working. Like, might as well make this a holiday, right?
Right.
Well,
right. There's a whole, like just like a lot of holidays, there's a whole industry of people that have to work, right? But but us in the professional space, we often have off. Some people do off on the 3rd too. I never really. It just extends it all.
It does. I was thinking also, think about like just people in general as well at a fireworks show. I think about the individual experience that people have as well. So you're having a positive individual experience watching the fireworks, but one of the things that this particular law can also sort of symbolize is the communal. So it becomes not just an individual experience, but it's like the collective experience. So, So think about things as far as transmuting energy. It's not just about transmuting your energy, but it's also how your energy then transmutes the global, the collective, the communal. So even within a firework, like you feel the awe, in the audience, everybody's like, oh, like they just get this excitement, and then that gives you excitement. So when you think about this particular law, it's also that it's not just about transmuting your energy, but it's also about how you're also impacting the collective as well.
Yeah, definitely. Because being just like, all of the cliche sayings around, being a part of a link in a chain. But I mean, that's very true, right? So when there's a group gathered, all of our energies, our individual energies kind of accumulate together, you can actually see energy fields from outer space. So from looking down on Earth, right? So
Yeah.
I wonder what it looks like on the 4th of July over the United States, right?
Yeah.
What the different energy fields. There was a study, and Jenna had found it and showed it to me, and we talked about it for a couple weeks. We're really interested in it, and then I can never find it again, but because I've tried to find it a couple of times for BOYBAS, but there's this study that shows what the energy fields were, what they looked like the day of 9/11, and there's this, after the Twin Towers went down, you can actually see for hours the frequency was just super high, and what they think is that's just the country and the world kind of mourning, our energy was so intense because we were all so feeling so deeply in those moments. So I wonder if the same thing happens with really positive things. I'd love to think about that. I also, whenever I'm at a fireworks show, there's this lyric in in an Ani DeFranco song, and she talks about how it's we're at the 4th of July and we're all enjoying it, but the poor birds are thinking that the world is ending. And I always think about the perspective of what are the animals thinking? What are the birds thinking? Holy shit, what is going on, right? I mean that's just it's a funny little caveat, but it's a funny thing to think about, right?
Oh yeah. They're birds live for a little bit. They're probably like, oh shit, not this again.
Right. They're oh my God, we made it through last time, but who knows?
Yeah. When you talked about, even when you talked about 9/11, you just started talking about it. I don't know about you, but whenever you have a very intense experience, you were there, those are things that you experienced. I had a feeling my whole body just, I felt the energy going, how it is that I felt in the moment we found out everything. And I just remember driving home and just the surreal feeling of everyone just being so nice. Okay, yeah, in Atlanta traffic, everybody's sure, you can get in front of me. It was just the most surreal. Everyone was nice. Everybody was just in maybe shock, but just
shock.
Yeah. But I still get that tingling feeling whenever we even talk about things like that.
Yeah, right. That's some sort of transmutation of energy right there, right? When just the thought of it can, right now, I can, I can feel it as well. And it's those big moments are a shared community thing, right? We all know, we all can picture. I won't forget where I was either. I was in college and I was babysitting a kiddo whose mom and partner, he wasn't a stepdad, but he was a live-in boyfriend for 10 years or something. They were in Italy, and I was house sitting and staying with her 14-year-old. And so I had just dropped her off at high school and had driven myself back to Marquette, and I walked into my girlfriend's apartment at the time, and everyone was asleep. And I just turned on the TV, back when you turn on the TV, and I literally saw the second plane going in. I was on the news, I turned it on, and I was holy shit, so I'll never forget that, right? And then when you talk to people who experience the death of Kennedy or these other really huge monumental things, you never forget where you were. Just you never forget where you were when you hear of what you when you hear of a loved one dying or something, these memories stay with us, but these collective ones are really interesting because they are shared, right?
Yeah.
Across, a whole huge amount of us.
Yeah. And so some of the things we're going to talk about today are how you redirect energy, for example, to negative to positive, recognizing opportunities, to be able to grow, how it is that we can become resilient by adapting to life's, consistent changing. But I thought first it might be good to talk about the first one. So how to redirect energy from negative to positive. And when I started to think about this one, I thought, well, first you have to have awareness. And you have to understand, like, what is the situation that you're dealing with, or what is the change you're actually even seeking. So when I think about life and I started to think about common situations that people desire to change, think about those things, relationship conflict, constantly in a conflict with your spouse. And so for anybody that's here, I'd be curious, like, what are some common situations that people tend to desire? And so Cate, what are your thoughts on common situations that a lot of people desire to change about their life, and having that awareness that they want that change?
Yeah. So I think we often talk about on BOYBAS, like those big changes, how you want to manifest something different for your life, or you want, when you were talking, it kind of brought me down to the more granular moments. So I was thinking about how when you can, first you have to have that awareness, like you were talking about, to change something inside. And so, like, I was thinking the granular moments of just like the mood, your mood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you wake up and you're just in a funk, and you, so if you are aware of it and you want to change it, you can do like some redirecting inside your head. You can exercise, you can use like all of the different things, like skills that we've talked about over the years, in terms of, how you can transmute your personal energy, that moment, into something different, right? But then what about when, I think this happens to a lot of people, to like answer your question, is what about when you don't have control over the situation, right? Mm-hmm. Like when you really want the change to happen to the people around you, like, right? Mm-hmm. What if your family's in a funk and you're not, right? And how do you change that? And what I was thinking about, one of the most effective ways is still to change yourself and model it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, to actually just start being what you want them to be in front of them.
Yeah.
In the hopes that they will, like, see it and gravitate toward it, right? Like their energy will start like pulling towards you almost magnetically. Sometimes they try to suck you down too, but most of the time you can just model it if you focus on what you can control, which is yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything comes down to that. It's, you can only control your actions, your, decisions of what it is that you're going to do. You can't necessarily impact other people on how they're going to react, or what it is that, the choices that they have to make. You have to decide for yourself what it is. We talk about this all the time, our values, the things that are important to us. So when I started thinking about like the different situations, relationship conflicts is one of them. So it's relationships not only with your family and your spouse, but also relationship, from a business perspective, relationships that you have there, clients, so think about all of those types of things, those conflicts that you have with people. And one of the things that, I think that will be important that we talk about is also what holds us back from transmuting as well. So, but first, that awareness, like, what is the challenge that I'm having? And then the next part is what also holds us back. So, whenever I started to think about those common situations, I think about, almost across the board, one of the questions that I had asked people that resoundingly people talked about stress and anxiety. Almost collectively, people are still dealing with just stress and anxiety in the world. Then there's other things like health challenges. There's personal setbacks. There's financial challenges. There's health challenges. There's career challenges. So whenever I started to sort of bucket them, those were all of the different things that I could think of as far as like how they could be sort of big picture bucketed.
Right.
And so I'd be curious for other people, what other challenges, do you feel don't fit in those big buckets? Can you think of any, Cate, or do you feel like as you start to, I think mood is one of them, but I sometimes feel like it's all of those things that then, are really impacting our mood, because it's like a lot of times that bigger challenge, it's that relationship, someone set you off, someone triggered you. It's, I'm not able, I don't have enough money, or I'm dealing with this from a health perspective, or God, I'm just under pressure, stress and anxiety. So I started to look at like the big buckets of things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think like I think your mood is impacted by all of those buckets, right? Just like you were saying. So like, even the very, just like the physical, which is your health, like you didn't get enough sleep, or you didn't,
exactly,
whatever. So I can't, I would also think your environment, like, so some people like really need or should transmute the energy they're surrounding themselves with, right? So like their actual environment. And I think that like I don't know, I don't see it around people that I know as much, but but you read stories or you see documentaries about people who just like get up and move to another place in the world, right? Like that is a huge shift, and it impacts so much. Like if you just pop yourself into another culture or whatever, I think that would be like maybe the only other thing, but it kind of is related to everything else. But your actual like physical location and meeting your physical needs, like some of those things on Maslow's hierarchy, your actual safety in your location and meeting your most basic needs.
Yeah. And Jan, I know you're driving, so she can't interact as much, but she says she's driving to family today. So thank you for joining us. I do see some other people on. Feel free to say hello to us. And so when you start to think about things that hold us back from transmuting, the biggest one that sort of stands out to me that I see a lot is fear of change, and just fear in general. And we talked about this previously as well, and there's a lot of different things that could hold us back. What are some things that, other things that you can think of that people allow them to hold them back, because they're, like we said, it's a choice. So you're choosing to either not change or allowing, the situation, that's presented to you. It's like, okay, well, what would hold me back from just going, okay, well, I don't choose that. I'm going to choose this. So I'm going to take this action. But I find that people don't necessarily do that because, one, a lot of it is fear of change. Sometimes I think it's also like negative talk as well. And then some of the other things that I've seen is also like victim mentality. Like and a lot of that is because of like the past, like that's how they, grew up as well. Like they'll continue to play that particular part. What are other things that you've seen that maybe hold people back from transmuting?
Other than a lack of awareness, in general, right? So there's an interesting concept, like, so that is interesting to me. It's interesting how it ties into awareness, right? So like there's so much power in being aware of where you currently are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like when you're experiencing some of the things that you were just talking about, like so when you were experiencing negative self-talk, like having the awareness to know that that it's happening.
Yeah.
To also maybe dig underneath and figure out what it's really from, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like even anger, I think, is a secondary emotion. I might be getting this wrong, where a lot of times it actually comes from fear, right? Fear is causing the anger a lot of times. So I think that's how negative self-talk often is. Like when you are afraid of something, like I'm afraid I don't have enough money. I find myself slipping into that thinking all the time and it's kind of exhausting to have to like, nope, you can't think that way. That's not the way you need to think because it's not helpful, right?
Yeah.
So that's so having that awareness and being able to recognize it and then being able, to redirect yourself in those moments is really super important. But here's what's interesting around awareness, right? Is that Jenna says this all the time lately. This is a new thing that she's been saying, but she's been saying she likes to live in Delulu land, which is what she's calling delusional, because she can make it trululu, like true. And what she's doing is, she literally creates the world around her that she wants to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And for her, a big part of that is kind of ignoring sometimes the realities around you.
Mm.
Like, yeah, there is a person in power that I don't, our president may not be somebody that I really care for right now. But if I pretend that doesn't really impact me, if I live in this world where I can change the things around me, to some that might seem delusional, like you're ignoring the reality, right?
Yeah.
But she's been saying lately, like if I live in Delulu land, I can make it Trululu.
Yeah. I love that. And I also think that it also requires action as well.
Right. Yes.
Like, so there's, Lululand. Yes, I can say, I can change my mindset and I can say like, that's not my reality. That's not my timeline. That's, those types of things. Like I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to create the environment around me that I love. You have
to take it a step further,
but you have to take it the step further and say, okay, but what actions will I also take to create my Delulu, my Lulu, to make it true. And so, so it's also, it's both, whenever I think about it, it's like, yes, we can not, box ourselves in to what it is that is happening. Like, no, I'm not going to, accept this as my reality. And I'm also going to take actions to, to help, change things as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That's why. Yeah. So it boils down to like so many of our universal laws. It boils down to, taking the right actions on a regular basis.
Yes.
It's not just like, well, I want to lose weight, so I'm going to not eat that brownie right now. And then and then it's going to happen. Like,
yeah.
It's unfortunately, no, I have to make that choice about 10 million more times in the next 2 years to really make the impact that I need to make. Right.
Yeah.
So Jan has a great comment here.
Yeah, I wanted to pull this up first. And so she said, what's holding us back from transmuting? She's put lack of confidence. And then she just stopped at the Starbucks. So have a mocha for me. And she said, as I age, I find I need to be conscious of how creaking joints affect my mood and how I can transmute the negativity to a positive. What helps me is just moving through the stiffness, looking at my dog, wagging his tail, and knowing that being uptight is better than not.
Upright, yeah.
Upright is better than nut. I was like, uptight. How does that work? Upright is better than not. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, that's so true, Jan. For both things you said, right? So like being able to take a vulnerability that you're experiencing, right? Like having your joints creaking, that's something that makes you vulnerable to a bad mood or to emotions that you may not want, right? Just like being tired makes you vulnerable to a bad mood or being hungry or sick, right? And then figuring out, telling yourself like, so you're doing it, so sometimes what I do, especially with kiddos, is try to get them to see how often they are actually doing this already in their normal day-to-day life, right? Yeah. You have this power because you just did it. So like Jan, you may wake up every day and be conscious of that pain, and then you're deploying tactics and skills to change it for yourself. You're looking at your dog, you're saying, oh, look at how happy that my dog is, and that makes me happy, and I can feel happy instead of feeling grumpy about this stiffness, and telling myself like, well, I could be dead, sometimes those little things are what you need to get your mind set to shift, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's like knowing that you have that power and you do it all the time should give you kind of like this history of like, well, I know how to do this. Like I've got the skill. I just need to deploy it more and as often as possible. Right. Mm-hmm. So just use that, Jan, to remind yourself, like, I'm doing that all the time. Like, no. I change everything if I want to, I'm good at that. I just need to keep focusing on it in the moments that it matters. And the other thing I wanted to say is like lack of confidence. That's huge, right? That's like, that probably is based in fear that you're like not good enough, or that you're, when you are lacking confidence. But I have felt that too. And recognizing it and then figuring out how you're going to react to that emotion that you're feeling, whether it's like a little shame or it's a little like just beating yourself up. Like lack of confidence can come from a few different places.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that we all battle with at different times in our lives. But it is something to be aware of and then to actively try to change, because anyone can do anything. I mean, we know that. And that's what we tell our loved ones.
Yeah.
Like Jan, I'm sure that's what you tell the kids in your life and the people around you, you can do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah. This also goes with a post that I just did. It was Maggie Kuhn is the person that this quote was from. It was, speak your mind, even if your voice shakes. And so when you think about the fact of not speaking up, it's because we are concerned about what other people might think about us. So it's that negative talk. Oh, well, if I do this, how will people think about me? Or it's fear of change, well, that's if I speak up, then I have to sort of change who I am as well. And so what I had posted is, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the willingness to act despite it. And so I'll share with you guys something that I had this week, is that within my company, one of the things that I am very much known for is speaking up. Like if I see something, I'm typically going to speak up and go, hey, this, how does this make sense? Or, like, how is that, going to, like we need to really understand, the return on investment, related to this, those types of things. And I sometimes feel that in a lot of ways, I'm the only one that is willing to step up sometimes and call out, call things out. So I sometimes feel, oh, do I want to be that person that is always being that person? Because it wears on you. It's like this feeling of like, God, do I have to be this person again? Like that type.
There's some pressure there.
There's a lot of pressure there. However, this week I ended up talking with someone one-on-one, and it was about some things that are going on, and it was past like well over a month ago, something that I had said to them that I was like, is this really, like, is this something you want to continue to do? Is this really something that, you want to continue to deal with? Can we help you with whatever these changes are? That type of thing. And it was more of like a switch for this person in, God, why am I still continuing to deal with this? Like, why am I dealing with this whenever I could make a different change? And so,
why am I allowing it?
Why am I allowing it? Why is it that I'm continuing down this pattern, this path? And so they ended up telling me that still stuck with them. Like the things that I said to them, I was, in some ways I was sort of calling them out, but I was also like, like, why are you dealing with this? Like, why are you allowing this to continue to, burden you when you don't have to be in that type of situation? And so it really stuck with them. And then there was something here recently, just the other day, that I was talking, as amongst a group. And I was like, so like, does this continue to make sense for the company? Like, like, should we do a little bit of, evaluation? Like, should we continue down this path? But everyone else was sort of sitting back and sort of allowing, like, okay, well, this is what we're doing. And I'm like, okay, but does it make sense? Like, should we continue to do this? Like, how do we now change this? So for me, it really is a drag being that person that is always having to say that. But it was a reassuring moment or an inspiring moment for me that this person came back and basically said, thank you, thank you for saying this, because it had me then have awareness I started to self-reflect, like, why am I also allowing this to happen, which is really hindering me? It's not allowing us to grow and me to grow. So it's those types of things, like even the most confident people still have that negative talk, still have that, oh gosh, fear of change, of sometimes speaking up. And so that's something that I think is true for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think like we all, like there's one of those, like there's the celebrity magazines like Us or something, and they have this like section that says, look, the celebrities are just like us, and like, look, Matt Damon goes to a coffee shop and gets coffee, but the whole premise there is that like, no matter what we have going on, or what we're really good at, we may still doubt ourselves at time, or we may still just want to see that other people are impacted or are struggling with the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So I think being like authentic about who you are and the role you play has to come with those challenges, right? Like you can't just, if you were always trying to point out the thing that maybe people aren't seeing, and your intentions weren't in the right place, you would never feel like weird about it, right? Like you would never feel that as pressure. You would never feel like, wow, I wish somebody else would see this, right? Because you would be like, this is my role and I am here to, snap things into place, right? Like, but it's actually authentic for you. It's actually a part of who you are. And that's why it's also sometimes a vulnerability, right? Because your intention really is to help. And it's that good intention behind it that can sometimes make you feel like, like, why am I the only one? Or
Yeah.
this is tiring to be the only, to be constantly looking for these things because I know the people around me won't see it, or they refuse to, right? Like, so.
And it's not that I don't necessarily think that other people, like some people don't see it, but I think that some people see it, but it's more like they're too afraid to say something because then how does that make them look? Or they're like, oh, I'm going to, say it in a nice way to, and hope that they understand what it is that I'm saying. So they don't say it in a direct way. Like, hey, this is a concern, like, is this really what we want? Or, things like that. They will pillow it like, oh, this might be something we should consider, and that is not impactful, by saying it that way, because then it's like you might as well not have said it because it's just a fluff shit. It's not transmuting. And I think that that's the biggest thing, is that in order for us to transmute, we have to be real about the situation and about, the situations that are going on, across the board, understanding all of the different components. And so Jan said, appreciate you ladies. Please touch on how we can help others transmute. Yes.
Yeah. So I think the first thing we've talked a little bit about it already, is
awareness,
modeling it.
Yep.
Yep. Awareness, like that it's happening, and modeling it, and then combining those two, right? So sometimes you forget that it actually takes effort to transmute the energy. Like, it's something that you just do, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes calling attention to it, not just to yourself, but as you're modeling it, like, and letting people letting people see a view of that, right? So like Jenna and I will do that for each other, because it's so nice to be able to reflect on how we each individually did manifest something different. But also, like, it serves as a reminder to each other too, that like we can all do this whenever we want, right? So like, I can say, I had this thought and I decided to change it into this, and this is how I did it. And literally calling attention to it out loud, I'm doing two things. Like, I am reliving it. I am embedding that energy and the way that I actually did the transmutation further into my like psyche by repeating it and talking about it. Like, that's a part of manifesting. That's like a part of a affirmation even around it, right? But then doing that in front of other people is modeling, this is how I did it, and this is how you can do it too. And we're all successful at it at certain times, but we all always need these reminders, because for whatever reason, we're all blessed with the fact that so much of our internal dialogue can be negative as humans, right?
Yeah. For me, one of the biggest things that is important to transmuting is thinking about the people you surround yourself with. One, if you're surrounded by other negative people, you'll continue to have that negative outlook in life. Two, if you don't have a person that is willing to call you out, that says, hey, like sometimes we don't see things, and we need someone to sort of say, hey, I've observed something, I've noticed something. So if you don't have someone that you can bounce things off of, whether it's a friend, whether it's a counselor, whether it's, I use a depth psychologist, so I'll talk to that person, because 80% of the things that we do are unconscious. Like, we do things and we don't even realize. Like, the things that really hold us back from transmuting is the unconscious is trying to let us know, and we are ignoring it. So, one of them that I have noticed is victim mentality, for example. So like this keeps happening to me, something your mother did something to you. And so you just hold on to that. And unconsciously, you're allowing that to continue you down the path of just continuing to be the victim of whatever it is that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Also the things that, like, if you had a parent that constantly said negative things to you and they didn't necessarily even knew that they were doing it, they were like, do you want to, are you going to continue to do that? And you're going to become the trash man, just innocent comments of like that ultimately are about you being stupid or not smart enough or, not good enough or all of those types of things. That's a voice that's stuck in your head. And we talked about this before. So you first have to recognize whose voice you're hearing. So in order to transmute that, first you have to recognize that it's someone else's voice, and you have to take steps to be able to change it. So in the moment, oh yeah, that's my mom's voice, or that's my dad's voice, or whatever the case, that was that teacher's voice. It's recognizing that voice that then allows you to be able to say, well, what do I
That's
want
not
to
my
say?
voice.
That's not my voice. What do I want to say, to myself? Or what would a friend actually tell me? And so how can I start to hear maybe that friend's voice instead? The biggest one for me is whenever I ignored my intuition. So for me, it was what was holding me back was listening to my intuition and allowing logic to come in and go, oh, but that's, that sounds crazy, or that's, whatever. But my intuition, my gut was like, no, like this is where you need to go. So for me, it was transmuting energy by listening to my intuition, being more in tune with what it is I needed in life and what it is that I needed to do, but also being willing to overcome the fear of going, you know what, I'm scared shitless on where it is that life is going to take me, but I'm going to take a plunge. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to go ahead and do those things.
Right.
But the key things that I've noticed is, are those types of things. And then also lack of gratitude, and so it's just understanding like what you do have in life. Even if we have nothing, there's still something we have in life. So when we also in each day, in each moment, for me, this is probably the biggest thing, and you'll hear it, out there, is that if you just take whatever the moment is, and I wanted to circle back with this. So Cate said, today she's tired. So that was, how she's waking up. She's like, oh, I'm so tired. I just want to go back to bed, and we also needed to do this. So how are we, how is it that we're transmuting that energy? It's thinking about, okay, I'm thankful, that I have an amazing role model of Dolly. I'm thinking about the fireworks, maybe that's not a good way because that's what kept her up in the middle of the night. But looking at, like, I get to engage with Jan today, it's those types of things that we can do to start to transmute energy.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I like Jan's comment. She says we can be the energy spark for others to fire their energy.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. And that is what, that brings it back full circle to the fireworks that we were talking about in the beginning. So I think modeling that, pointing to it, and getting in touch with your intuition and your subconscious is great. So whatever you can do or whatever can work for you, or trying some different methods, in order to actually feel that deeper connection.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, it's hard, it's hard to adapt. Sometimes we're stubborn and we're stuck in our ways, and, it's hard to, to change, in life. But it's like, okay, and this goes back to number one, the law number one, there's a pattern. In order to change, in order to transmute, you first have to recognize the pattern in order to then understand what it is you need to do. Then you need to think about the law of action, how it is the actions you're going to take that are different than what it is that you're doing. So for me, it's it's almost like marketing. Like you try something and you go, oh, let's see how, what it is people are saying or what it is, that, get the feedback, that type of thing. Oh, that's not working. All right, well, let's try something else. So it's like being willing to just try shit and say,
Yeah.
okay, let's try, let's do this in small increments. Let's see, how it is that we can continue to evolve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's why marketers try things for like 6 months. They get the reactions, they test it, they then move on. So they're being very tactical and metric oriented around their actions.
Yes.
And you can take those same principles and apply them to yourself. So the people that people that are really successful, for instance, in losing a bunch of weight, it's because they are tactical about it and they focus on it. It's important to them, and it's those incremental steps that they are. That's how the change is made, right? Same with your career or anything else. You have to be aware of it and work on it. Work on that transmutation on a regular basis in order to make it happen.
Yeah, and the other part is consistency. Like you also have to, like, as you start to see things that are successful, it's like, okay, well, let's continue to build upon that. So, the moment you start to pull away from things, you now have to start back over. Okay. Now, now we gotta build the momentum back, back up in whatever it is that we're doing. So it's also being sometimes patient and, with the consistency as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Everyone knows what that's like. If you think about, I don't know why I keep going back to food and diet or like losing weight, but I mean, the first thing I thought of is like everyone knows what it's like when you have your cheat meal or your cheat day. Like it's so much harder, even though it's so great to treat yourself. It's so much harder to start that next moment. Like, oh, now I have to go back to like that salad. Like I just can't keep having the donuts. Like that sucks, but that's where the that's where the change happens, is with that consistency, right? So same thing. And I think people that are neurodivergent or have attention issues or focus issues, struggle with this sometimes a little bit more in day-to-day life. Like, so, I may find that a certain thing in my routine is really super helpful for me. And something then changes. I have a disruption. Maybe it's beyond my control. And then all of a sudden, I actually forgot that was working for me, because after that disruption, I got distracted and I worked on something else. And, so be aware of that and be helpful to the people around you. The other thing that I was thinking earlier and kind of forgot to communicate, but one way that you can help others transmute is, especially if they are being like vague around it, or like what you were saying, like not being super direct, is to, if they're open to it, they have to be a willing participant in the conversation, but it's to help them kind of question it a little bit and get them thinking, right? So we talk about this a fair amount internally at work, but making sure that you're surrounding yourselves with people that will challenge you and support you, but also help you think through some things when you aren't quite able to do it yourself, or it's just not occurring to you, right?
Yeah. And, one of the things that I've had to work on is that growth comes from challenges and discomfort. And one of the things that I have struggled with is I hate to see people in discomfort. So sometimes I have done things that have prolonged and kept people from dealing with the discomfort.
Yeah.
And so those are things that I've had to reflect upon myself, because that's, my thing is, oh, I want to come in, I want to help, I want to be, the savior, the hero or whatever. Oh, I'm helping this person. What I've also found is that whenever I do that, I'm also keeping people from then having to self-reflect on what it is they might also need to do. as well. So that's something that I think that is important as well. The only way we're going to grow is to deal with challenges and also have discomfort. When you think back on the times that you're like, oh man, had I not gone through that divorce, I wouldn't be where I was at. Like that was
Right.
a lot of discomfort in my life.
Right.
But I think about the transformation, that how it is that I changed and the amazing things that came from it. Sometimes allowing people that discomfort of, pulling away from them or whatever it might be, sometimes allows them to then self-reflect.
Yeah.
Because now you're not there to be that person that's comforting them as well.
Yeah. And I would challenge everyone to do that, even with the really hard moments, because the truth is that even these, like, we're all afraid to say, like, well, I'm glad my mom died, right? You probably aren't, but like there are blessings in there, like in little ways, right? Like, so one of the things that I thought about with Jenna's mom dying is, I'm actually really glad that she died the way that she did, because she would have fucking hated having like a long illness. Like it would have wrecked her, and like, there's a blessing there in a fast death, or I've thought about with my own mom and how my eldest brother, who was her, he was her son, previous to joining our family, like from her previous marriage, he's continues to be an alcoholic. And I think like in some ways, I'm glad she passed before she has to see him pass, right? Mm-hmm. Like before, because like he's continuing to make himself so sick, right? So there's like, and we're kind of afraid as a society to see the good or the blessings in those really hard moments, because it feels like we're ungrateful or we're like, just looking at it the wrong way or something. But I think if we challenge ourselves to do that more frequently, it will become easier to do it in the less hard moments too.
Yeah. All right. I'm looking at time. Let's maybe do a little bit of a recap. If you were to give like final thoughts to people on transmuting and the things to keep in mind, what would you say?
I would say, don't stop believing. Stay aware of it and be on top of it, and just make it be a priority to you at all times, right? So like the very topic of I need to transmute this energy, keep that on the forefront of your mind.
Yeah, I like that. Don't stop believing. Don't stop believing. That's the song That's the song my husband has to have me sing every time we do karaoke. He's like, just do that song and be done.
That's it.
So for me, as we sort of wrap up today on the law of perpetual transmutation of energy, I think of life is characterized by change. And it's the resilience and that ability to sort of bounce back from whatever it is we're dealing with, adversity or, just the daily challenges that we're dealing with. So for me, it's about embracing change. People tend to be scared of change, but when we resist it, when we, look at the things that are going on in our life and we say, okay, but why is this keep happening to me? Those types of things. It's about embracing, okay, what is it that I need to do? So it could be everything from developing a stronger support network to maybe being flexible with our goals and identifying, okay, maybe this isn't the right path. Maybe I need to be flexible and look at different options. Stress for me, it's also about practicing self-care. So it's what am I going to do to then enhance myself through either self-care or self-love? For me, it's all about going inward and identifying within myself, what is it that I need to change? What is it that I need to adapt to create my new situation? So it is, as Cate said, from Jenna, it is, identifying what it is that you want differently. It's, I want something different for my timeline. And also, what do I need to do in order to make that change for yourself? And unfortunately, that is only something that you can say. It is different for every single person, but it's going inward. It's that self-awareness. It's going in and identifying what your real challenges are, which typically are that unconscious items that you don't even know why it is that you're doing this or why it is you're struggling with this. So it's digging deeper to understand that before you can actually then take the action to create the change and to transmute your life.
And it's not that you don't know, you're not like immediately aware of it. It's not in your face, but you do know. Like that's the thing, is that like your subconscious is unknown to you in your day to day, but if you do the work to dig deeper, it's all there.
Yeah.
So like that, I think that can sometimes be confusing for people, or like feel like, well, if I don't know, then how do I know? No, you do. You have to dig in. You have to question yourself. You have to reflect. You have to sit in it and figure it out, and listen to yourself and listen to that intuition. So it is all there.
And that's done through journaling. It's done through dream analysis. It's done through just sitting and meditating and understanding the visualizations or the things that come to you. Like it will it will present itself, but you have to be willing to sit in silence or to be in a moment to reflect and see it.
Yep. And you have to trust that you can do it. You can figure it out. You have to trust that so that's a whole nother level of it too. I am happy to report that I think I have manifested that my family has stayed asleep so that I can crawl back into bed.
Yes.
So that is what I am doing after. I'm super glad though that I didn't yawn once during the episode. Yay! I was able to transform this energy, but now I am super psyched to transmute it back into a laying down state.
I love it. Whenever I thought about this show today, the song that kept coming to my mind was actually by Katy Perry. Baby, you're a firework. And so, as I started to think about that, it's like that change, like you can be the firework. You can be the change in your life by the explosion of really thinking about all of that underlying chemical reaction, within you, and then, bursting into the sky.
Yeah. Yeah. I do like that song. It's cheesy as hell, but it's still a great song.
It is.
And it's so fun to sing.
It is. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Jan, thanks for interacting with us. And I did see other people on the call. So thank you for our lurkers out there as well that have joined us. And so be sure to come back on the 11th. So July 11th, and we will have Danielle Gray will be joining us. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and have an amazing 4th. An amazing weekend, and we will see you next week.
Bye.